Mm, 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 mm. Yeah. Yeah, man, we about to get it in. We about to do something nice. I'm going on a retreat this weekend with my church. I'm looking forward to it. But let's have this conversation. I've been hearing this topic a lot, and it's really relevant for right now. But let's have this conversation. First things first. Welcome to CNN. I'm your host, the underdog, Kirk Kennedy. Let's go in. On this channel, we take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead we expose them. At least we try to do that. All right. There are a lot of conversations. Good morrow, Brandon. What's up with you? You know what I'm saying? Good to catch you out here off the late night tip. So I get that late. All right. Let's jump into this. Y'all log on when y'all log on. So I did a video yesterday saying, okay, we know who won what now. And the comments on that video have been encouraging. Although I did lose some subscribers. And I told people unsubscribe. And they took me up on it. And I'm good with it. So, all right. So I did that video yesterday. But today, I have seen at least maybe 6 or 7 videos on why Kamala Harris lost the election. And actually, surprisingly for me, the person who I thought had the most insightful comments was Stephen A. Smith. I typically don't think he's as amazing as he thinks he is, but I thought he had the most insightful comments, and I heard a variety of different perspectives. But as I was listening to all of the different reasons why people thought Kamala Harris lost the election, I had a few thoughts, and I thought I would share them. So you take them with a grain of salt, unless you got high blood pressure. All right, so let me give you some of the ones that are out there right now. So there are a lot of opinions on why Kamala Harris lost. First of all, you know, as I've gotten older, I see the relevance, but in some cases the idolatry of the political realm, and maybe because we're now so inundated with social media and we have access. You know, now media, we don't even know what journalism is anymore, because you can just write on have a Medium page, or you have a web journalism page, and you just basically just giving your opinion, but you didn't get a degree or anything, right? So you got that. You got media is different. You have legacy media, which is like NBC, CNN, you know, Fox, those ABC, CBS. You got that, but then you have other media, you know, Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro stuff. You got multiple people with millions of subscribers that people listen to get their primary information from. So because of that, we have such a connection to what a lot of people think, that we're no longer beholden to this particular network, so to speak. So I've seen so many people reacting to her losing, and a lot of it is either lamenting or gloating. I think it's really interesting. And I'm just, I'm just not in a place where I'm in either of those places where I'm gloating or lamenting. It just, life goes on. I mean, life goes on. You know, like one day I'm going to die, and my kids will be sad. People who know me and love me will be sad, but then they got to get up and go to work the next day, right? Life just goes on. So as I was watching, so I'm hearing all these different people, watching all these people. And it's really been fascinating to me personally, just to be like, wow, these people were really affected by her not winning, or him losing, or him winning, or it's just really interesting. But then I started seeing all these why Kamala Harris lost. So let me give you some of the more popular reasons, and then let me tell you what I think people are kind of missing. And again, it's just my vantage point. I don't have it figured out, but obviously I obviously have a different perspective than some other people, because I'm going to say it. All right, so one of the first narratives, she started too late. You know, this was just a couple of months ago when Joe Biden had that debate with Donald Trump, and it was clear to everyone, including the Democrats, that ploy was not going to work, where you were going to try to offer Joe Biden to us as a viable, mentally stable candidate for the next 4 years. It just wasn't working. It was clear. And the way Trump was looking at him, Trump has that gangster face. Trump got that look, right, where he just look at you. So again, I think Trump is often a comedian, sometimes when he's not trying to be. So I watched that debate and I thought, wow, the Dems they really hate this country. There's no way they're going to pass this dude off as he can run again. So I was actually excited to see the backlash, even from the Democrats. And then she gets pulled in. She has to, because the way that it works, like, I'm sure you heard about this super PACs. Remember Elon Musk was talking about, he created a super PAC, which is an organization that gives money, contributions to candidates so they can run, right? There's always this drama of how much money, campaign reform, and how much money can you take, and they're getting too much money, and what are they doing with that money? And so you can give money through these PACs. If you watch some of those commercials, that'll be like paid for, like, this guy's a terrible candidate. He does this, this, and this. And you say paid for by such and such PAC, PAC, right? It's an organization that gives money for particular candidates, right? So there was a PAC, like, it's almost like an account where money is given to the candidate, whoever the president running for president and whoever's the vice president, they're on the ticket. That money belongs to them. Only them. It's like a restricted fund. You cannot use it for anything or anyone else. If you do, then you break the law, right? Well, when it was clear that Joe Biden wasn't going to run, all those millions of dollars were either going to be lost or they were going to go to Kamala Harris. And so Kamala Harris gets nominated 2 months ago, and she runs a pretty good campaign in terms of being a politician. I'm not talking about her policies. Good. I'm talking about just in trying to be a politician. I think she did as well as she could for a couple months. So some people say she started too late. She only 2 months to build this momentum, and it just wasn't enough, right? Some people will say, well, she didn't separate herself from Joe Biden enough. When she was on The View and they asked her, so Kamala, what would you think you would do differently than Joe Biden? And she said something to the effect of, I can't think of anything I would do differently, So there's a lot of people, you got to remember, like, the last time we saw Joe Biden from when Kamala Harris made that statement, he looked like he didn't know where he was in that debate. Like, we didn't see him a lot in the public eye. They kept him out of the public. So he looked like he didn't know where he was. So that's the last visual image people have of him, where they think like this guy has dementia or Alzheimer's. That's just really, my grandfather died of dementia and he had Alzheimer's, and I watched him deteriorate, and I'm looking at Joe Biden like, wow, they're really trying to say that this guy can run the country again? Are you kidding me? And I'm glad I did that. So anyway, when she said that, all the things that whether the policies, there were also, you just had a visual concern for Joe Biden. So you're equating, I wouldn't do anything differently, not just to what policies he has, but also you're thinking he doesn't know what he's doing. So I think that played a role into it. Like, she just didn't separate herself enough. That's what some people are saying, right? Another one, which is pretty newer, Obama's, both Michelle and Barry, right? Barack Obama, they were shaming black men for not wanting to vote for women in particular. I thought that was interesting because a lot of black men were raised by their moms or their grandmothers. And so I did a video on that. I'm not going to repeat all of that. I just thought that was a really dumb strategy. And it's low hanging fruit because, no one really cares when you say negative things about black people, right? For the most part. I mean, yeah, sure, some people do, but a lot of people just haven't. I mean, throughout history, it's just been the norm, right? So they don't talk about white women. They didn't say nothing about progressive. They didn't say nothing. It was almost like if black men don't vote, as if every black man is just going to vote for Kamala because they're black. Like, what are you talking about? So there was that piece. And so, this idea that like they don't want a woman to be the misogyny and all of that. Some people say that was it. And I could give you more reasons. I'm sure you've heard about. There's two reasons why she didn't win. One that's the real reason, and then one that I think also contributes to this. So let me give you the one that also contributes, and then we'll get to the real reason why I think Kamala Harris lost. Here's the second reason, if you will, of why Kamala Harris lost. I think Kamala Harris got what she wanted. She got what she wanted. Let me explain what I mean. Kamala Harris was in the 2020 election. She was one of the first major names to pull out. And the story was then, she doesn't know how to run a campaign. They said her staffers don't like her. All these things, all this stuff came out. And this was really after that debate, the Democratic debate, when they were all still kind of figuring out who's going to be the Democratic nominee. You know, both Republican and Democrat, sometimes, not always, like Trump didn't really have anyone competing with him this go around, but usually they have other people that are in the Democratic Party trying to win the nomination for the vote. So in that particular, there was like 7 of them: Joe Biden, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. This is back when Tulsi Gabbard was still out of Hawaii. She was still a Democrat. You know, now she's a Republican, a conservative, or I don't know if she identifies as independent. I don't know what she is. She ain't a Democrat no more, right? But in that debate, she scorched earth Kamala Harris. I mean, she brought up her record, because Kamala Harris went after Joe Biden. You know, you passed racist laws that segregated people, and I want you to know. And she told a story about this little girl who had to go through all this stuff because of laws that Joe Biden passed. And she was like, I was that little girl. You know, so there was almost like this, like this reverence for her because like, oh, wow, look at what you've been through. But then Tulsi Gabbard is like, you know, you claim to care about black families. And she gave stats of you locked up black people for way in order prison time. It was way more than what they needed to be locked up for, all this stuff. So she really just punched her in the face hard. And that after that, Kamala Harris dropped out of the race. She was one of the first. I was actually surprised because you had Amy. What's it? Amy. What's her last name? Amy. I can't remember her name. But I thought she was. I didn't think she was great, but she was even still in it. So it was really interesting to watch her drop out, right? So then she became vice president. Joe Biden picked her, I think, out of obligation because they wanted to push the DEI narrative. So then Kamala, who never really identified as black, her father's Jamaican, her mother's Indian. Then it became like, oh, she's black. But then they were like, no, we can't say that, so she's a woman of color. That's legitimate. So then she becomes the vice president. And it's like, oh, but people still don't like her. They still don't like her. Her own party doesn't really like her. And so she's relegated to behind the scenes. I mean, all of a sudden, like you just never saw Kamala Harris anywhere. Like not that I was looking for her, but you just never saw her anyplace. She wasn't a vice president. They knew that she was picked to be VP because she was a person of color. And Joe Biden owed that to black people because, you know, we've been starting to say stuff like, man, y'all don't do nothing for the black community, right? People will say Obama didn't. They make it seem like all black people revered Obama. I know a lot of black people that thought he did a terrible job. Shoot, I was just at the barbershop. It's all black, except for a couple of one or two white dudes that was getting the black shape up, right? I was in there, and them dudes was in there like, man, Obama did more for the LGBTQ community than the black people. Now, I don't know what black people thought he was going to do. I don't know. I mean, what was he supposed to, well, he wasn't going to have no cookouts or nothing. I mean, I don't know. People act like he was going to get in there and just be grilling all the time and they have Jay-Z and him just coming in there having block parties. Like, I don't know what people think black is and I don't know. But he just didn't do enough, and I would agree with that. So, you know, you bring Kamala Harris in because that's kind of saving face. There wasn't, he'd already won, so now it's like, okay, here's your VP. And it's like, oh, you know, it was a black woman or whatever, right? But then she disappeared. It was like Harry Houdini out this joint. Hold the flag, and she's just gone. Everybody's looking around like, where did she go? She was just gone. And then you start hearing like she has the lowest approval rating of any vice president, right? It was crazy. And lower than Dick Cheney, which people just didn't even like Dick Cheney. I don't know why. I think because he shot a dude when they were hunting or something. I don't know why. No, I do know why, but that's not the purpose of this video. So she's gone. They don't like her. People don't like her. The polls are saying she's one of the second worst liked. And then all of a sudden, she's now the face of the Democratic Party. This was not just a shock to the Democrats. It was a shock to her. She went from being proverbially, I'm saying this proverbial, I'm using an analogy, I'm not saying, she went from being the ugly duckling to Cinderella just like that. Just like that. She was not, Her only hope was that if Joe Biden could get another term. But there was nothing about Kamala Harris that anyone was drawn to. And the Democrats know, at the time, what we didn't know that we know now, that if they would have picked another candidate, all those millions of dollars, that PAC money would have been gone. It was a restricted fund given to just the Biden-Harris ticket. Once that, if used to, they didn't have time. They were all like, look, Donald Trump doesn't have anyone challenging him. We got to beat him. We don't have time. So they said, all right, we're going to go with Kamala Harris. And then she's put in the forefront. And now she's finally liked. She's liked. All these years, these last couple years, like, see, this is the thing about people, right? We're so used to seeing people in public and all this stuff. We actually think they just don't have emotions. Like, we forget that, like, Kamala Harris is made in God's image, is a flesh and blood human being with feelings. And she hears negative things said about her. And I'm sure there were times she cried herself to sleep. Like, she's a person, right? We act like because we don't like people or their policies that somehow they just become inanimate objects, right? These are people, man. How many celebrities have you heard say that they were reading comments and got really offended and hurt by it? They don't know these people. But when you hear something negative about you, it has an impact. Don't think for a moment that Kamala Harris wasn't hearing the lowest rated, all this stuff. She had low self-esteem. She probably didn't want to be seen because she was afraid of things that she would say. And sometimes when she did say things, it was just like, what are you talking about? So here Kamala Harris is disliked from everyone. And now all of a sudden, you're the fake. This is our gal. Joy. Like, they're pretending like they're behind her because they just want to desperately beat Donald Trump. And so they're trying to make it seem like they're really excited about her and behind her, but they've been having other people run the White House for years anyway. So they weren't worried about her. They just wanted to seem like they were excited about her. And she was so excited to finally be liked by people. Celebrities are endorsing her. I mean, my goodness, she has Taylor Swift, one of the most popular women in the world, Beyonce, most popular. All these people are saying her that she went on a celebrity tour. The last 2 weeks or so, she was just going around just having a good time, schmoozing it up. You got Megan Thee Stallion twerking at your parties. You think that, like, and this is the wild part, because the Democratic Party is typically associated with black culture and black people. So they appeal to that. They forgot there's a lot of people that don't know who Megan Thee Stallion is, that don't like Beyonce, they don't listen to her music. There are white progressives that don't care about that stuff. Don't think only the Republicans listen to country music and all that. There's some white people on the left side too. Listen, it's only 13% of black people in America, 44, 45 million. And there's 300 plus million people. There's a lot of white people who vote Democrat. And they don't care about no Beyonce. But they appealed to that. That was their way of appealing to the black culture. Let's get Megan Thee Stallion to twerk. Let's get Beyonce to come out there and give a speech and look all. And so for the first time in Kamala Harris's political career, people like her. She's excited. She's good. She's finally accepted by the public. I don't even think she really wanted to win, except she got a taste of the glory. You know what I'm saying? She got a taste of that Nacho Libre. I want a taste of the glory. Jack Black is a genius. You know, she just got it. And all of a sudden, for the first time in her career, she went from, hey, no one likes you, to like, everyone's hoping that you beat Donald Trump. I don't think she was really ready for it. And I don't even know if she really cared. I'm sure on some level she did, because then it would be even more praise. Kamala Harris is a human being, fam. And she got what she wanted. She got finally recognition. When she said that thing to Joe Biden, I was that black girl. And everyone started clapping, and you could tell she felt good about it. But then she got flunked for almost 4 years. And now she's being praised by everyone, worshiped by people. That's intoxicating. Listen, I've done concerts, or I've preached at like conferences with thousands of people in front of me. And I've preached, and I'm cracking jokes. And when you hear thousands of people laughing at your joke, it's intoxicating. It's fantastic. It feels great. You want to, you all of a sudden you working on your material rather than preaching a sermon. It's just a good feeling. I remember one time Kanye West said, it's kind of hard to be humble when you stunting on a Jumbotron. He was saying, look, when you can see yourself on this big screen that everybody's looking at, it's hard to be humble, right? Kamala Harris got what she wanted. She wanted acceptance, and now she gets it. You got Beyonce, a woman that wouldn't have gave you, that didn't say, none of these people said nothing about her 4 years ago. Nothing about her 4 years ago. But now, they calling in all the celebrities, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. So that's the sub reason, but let me give you the main reason why I think Kamala Harris didn't win. And this is, stay with me, because this is not going to turn out how you think once you hear what I say. This is going to turn out differently than I think what you may think. But the main reason why is simply just the Lord didn't want her to win, right? But it's deeper than this, so stay with me. It's deeper than just what you think. The Lord didn't want her to win because the Lord, I think, is doing something much different. Now, let me say this. I've never once said, oh, I'm a prophet. I think most of those people, I don't listen to none of them. I think, man, you prophesy about stuff the Bible disagrees with. Jay-Z said it best. We don't believe you. You need more people. We don't believe you. So I'm not saying that at all. Take this with a grain of salt. I didn't get a vision from the Lord in this. But I do know the word. I do believe the scriptures, and I do pay attention to how I think God is working. I don't start with man. Well, I don't look at things like horizontal. I always start with, Lord, what are you doing? What are you exposing right now? Like, why are you letting us see this? Why are you exposing all these celebrities? Why are you exposing these pastors? I ask that kind of question. I'm not worried about, oh, look at what I'm always like, man, Lord, what are you doing? You know, I always start the show with this verse. Ephesians 5:11, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. I think God, that's what God does, that he exposes, right? Whatever is done in the dark brings to the light. So I always think, Lord, what are you doing? I think the Lord didn't want her to win, but it's not for the reason you probably think. The Lord is exposing some things. And let me explain to you what I mean by this in a little bit more graphic detail. Over the last 12 years, let's say last 10, from Mike Brown on down, I think the Lord exposed. So first of all, let me say this. There are Christians on all sides, right? There are Christians that identify as conservative, and there are Christians that identify as liberal or identify as Democrats, and there are people who profess to be Christians that identify as Republicans. So know that. I think sometimes it can seem like all of the Christians are on the conservative side and all of the just liberal, super far left are on the Democrat side. No, there are a lot of people who profess to be Christians that vote Democrat, right? That are on the left. And a lot of people who profess to be Christians are on the right, all right? I needed to say that so you can understand the point I'm trying to make. The Lord didn't want her to win, and I think the Lord's been doing something significant over the last 10 years, right? So starting with 2014, after Mike Brown got killed, there was such a rise within the church, in the culture, yes, but in the church, in the evangelical church, there was a rise of anger. Some of it initially started off as righteous, but then it became, people got offended. And let me tell you what I mean. So within the evangelical church, particularly the Reformed branch of the evangelical church, after Mike Brown was killed, whether you thought it was an accident or his hands up, don't shoot, which proved to not necessarily be true. But at the time, it wasn't really about the truth of hands up, don't shoot. For many black people, it was a mosaic. But black Christians in general, black pastors, for them, it was, hey, man, we want to hear our white brothers stand up and say, hey, this is deplorable, this is wrong. And a lot of the white evangelical leaders and pastors didn't really feel like that. They didn't feel that they didn't feel like the Mike Brown situation warranted that and this and that. And I don't think a lot of black pastors did a good job explaining what they meant by that. They started to get offended. And I lost friends because of this, so I'm not afraid to say this. And I lost some good friends, or people just stopped talking to me because I was in the middle, like, no, you're wrong too, and you're wrong too. I've always been there. I've always been able to say, to call the deeds of darkness on both sides. But people started to double down, and it became us versus them, whatever side you were on. And there were Christians on the left who, particularly black Christians, a lot of black ones, but not just black, but there were a lot of black Christians, started adopting language towards white Christian conservatives. And it started with saying, you just say that because of white privilege, right? It started to become white privilege. Like, you're just saying this. You don't agree with the stuff that we're going through because it's white privilege, right? And then you had to think about it. A lot of, especially in the Reformed Church, a lot of black people, to go to a Reformed church, which is predominantly white Christians, like it's white sort of, when I say white theology, I don't mean it's like Christianity is white man religion. I just mean a lot of predominantly white churches yield more towards what we call Reformed theology, and modern American evangelicalism is more black than it is, more white than it is black. So you had, what happened was, as guys started to call out to their white brothers to say, hey, I need you to back this up and say something because you'll have a voice that we don't have. And they were unwilling to do that for a number of reasons. They started to get offended, started talking about white privilege, right? And then once white people heard white privilege, they kind of doubled down on that as well and started getting angry. And they responded with, oh, you're just a Marxist, right? You're a cultural Marxist. And this is in the church. I'm not talking about the culture. I'm talking about just in the church. So you had black pastors, guys like Thabiti Anyabwile and Eric Mason and people who had been friends. I mean, Thabiti, I knew Thabiti before he got big. Before he was like one of the, and then Mark Dever, they put him on the T4G Together for the Gospel stage in 2008, and there was the rise of Thabiti Anyabwile, and then Eric Mason was another dude that was making it. So you had these black men and who had been Tony Carter and different people who had been in these circles that were saying, hold up, man, why are y'all acting like, you know, we calling this we Marxism? Why y'all calling me white privilege? And it became this. It started to rise, started to bubble, it started to fester, and the enemy was loving it, right? And people started doubling down. You had the black pastors, but they were offended because they were like, hold up, man, hold up, fam, hold on. We left the comforts of our own churches, our own styles of music, our own this, to come to your churches to sing different worship music. We had to humble ourselves and come and join your churches. Y'all didn't come and join black churches. We came in, we had to read, Puritans who owned slaves and Jonathan. So there was a lot of, and all of a sudden people started getting offended, like, hold on. We've proven ourselves that we submitted to theology from white men that we didn't even want to, but we did it for the unity of the gospel. And now y'all can't say that this is wrong to shoot a black man in the street. And the white people on the conservative side, they were like, hold on, what are you talking about? This isn't white privilege. Like, this is not the gospel. It's not the gospel. And then it was like, oh, so abortion is the gospel? Well, yeah. And so all of us, it was all this fighting. It was just fighting. It was fighting. And so a lot of Christians on the left doubled down on like the Black Lives Matter narrative. Now, not saying that they were with the movement, right? It wasn't like they agreed with them fully, but they were doubling down on the Black Lives Matter. And then all of a sudden from that, they started getting called cultural Marxists, and they were saying white privilege, and then white supremacy started to come from that side. And then all of a sudden the right side pushed back with social justice warrior, right? And so now it's like, well, what is social justice biblically? And you got people doubling down on both sides and people proving that it's not the social justice that you're talking about. And they're saying, well, you can't define justice biblically. You don't even know where to go, right? And it was all these arguments, and names just kept coming and coming, and then people were getting angry. And then all of a sudden, CRT shows up out of nowhere, and now this explains everything, critical race theory. And then and then the right pushes back with, you're just woke. You're woke, and it keeps going back and forth. And the left was doubling down. All of a sudden, dudes were like, man, I can't even talk to that dude. I would talk with guys that have been good friends with guys that was like, I can't talk to him anymore. I can't meet with him. I can't talk to him. And all of a sudden, this idea of, if you're not supporting what we're saying on the left, then you're basically supporting racism. You're proving it. And that was a serious, bold, sinful claim. That was a crazy claim to make, but dudes were doubling down. The dudes were doubling down. And so this idea, then all of a sudden anti-racism comes up, and the conservatives just stay with one foot. You're just woke. Everything was about woke. It was woke. They went from cultural Marxists, Marxists to cultural Marxists, socialist war to woke. That became their thing. Boom. We're going to stay with that. And the left was just like, boom. And the anti-racism became, and all of a sudden, dudes was just talking about, if you ain't speaking out against this, then you ain't a friend of mine. And it was all a lack of love. It was lack of love. There were some things that were true that both sides were saying, but there was such anger and such an offense that it lacked love. And so the Lord, he said, I'm going to expose the fallacy of the left, this kind of theology. Because you got to think, the Lord watches this and sees his people, and he's like, nah, bro. Nah, You know, we think sometimes we just think like the Lord is just up there chilling like, No, the Lord's grieved by this, right? He's watching the people on the left all of a sudden pledge allegiance to this kind of ideology, right? All of a sudden, this stuff CRT starts infiltrating the church. Now, let me say this. I think Karl Marx, let me just go on record. I think Karl Marx made some accurate observations. I don't think it's at all far-fetched to talk about a group of people, whatever you call them, the bourgeoisie or whatever you call them. There are people who have money that take advantage of other people. Man, it's just not biblical. I mean, this is what Jesus warned against the rich. Most of the passages in the New Testament to the rich warned them, right? It wasn't like, hey, rich, man, I'm so grateful for y'all. It was warning you, right? So taking advantage of people was not unique to Karl Marx, but because it was shaped in this ideology and because some of his observations were accurate, but all of his solutions were horrible, right? And what happened is because people got so offended, they could no longer see the distinction and give each other the benefit of the doubt. Let me hear what you're saying. It was like, everything you're saying is woke and everything you're saying is white supremacy, white privilege, right? This is the church I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the culture. Yes, that was the culture, but that's not what's supposed to be in the church. This is the church, right? I was behind the scenes. I watched it all play out and I spoke up when I could. I started to say stuff. I put music. I got an album on iTunes right now called The Appendix. C4 and The Appendix. I was trying to explain and help people see how did we get to this point? Because I felt like people were so offended. And all of a sudden it was on the left, it was like, you need to be accountable for the sins of your ancestors. And then the right was like, how can we be accountable for sins that we didn't do? And that became a huge beef between the church. And so I thank God, and I think many people meant well. I understood what they were saying. As a black man, I got it. I got what you were saying. I didn't always agree with the conclusions and connections that were being made, but I got it. I got what you were saying. Some stuff I agree with. I thought both sides made good points at times, and both sides were sinful at times, right? And I wasn't afraid to call it out. And so therefore I lost some relationships, which I don't regret because it just is what it is. If we're all real believers, I'll see you in heaven and we'll laugh at it. We'll dap each other up and keep it moving. But this is what was happening in the church, right? So I think the Lord said, all right, let me expose the fallacy of this because this is becoming so dangerous that my people who are on the left are following this narrative and this movement, and everything is being filtered through this one lens of race. Everything, police brutality, all these things started getting filtered just through one thing. And people, the believers on the left were like, if you don't agree with this stuff about racism, then we don't trust you. We can't fellowship with you. All these things that became gospel issues that I don't think were gospel issues to Jesus himself. So he exposed it. So he exposed the fallacy of the Black Lives Matter ideology and all of that by exposing the leaders, Patrice Cullors and the other women who were basically proved to be frauds. He exposed the fallacy of people because they were forcing people to accept a racism and sexism sexuality narrative, which allowed believers who associate with the left to be unloving towards believers who voted for Trump on the right. And this is what happened. It was what happened. Like believers, they were genuinely hurt. I got it. I was there. I was talking to white pastors. If I named the names, you would be like, wow, I was up there. Remember, I was the first one to rap at John Piper's church and make reformed rap accessible to everyone, right? The Lord, for whatever reason, the Lord used me to do that. I was the first one to do that. I was Voice back then. I was a Christian artist called Voice. And And I rapped at his church, did a song called Unstoppable, and that opened the doors, and all of a sudden that helped foster this relationship of urban culture and white suburban culture, middle to upper class culture, based on a foundation of faith in the gospel or a particular theological brand called Reformed theology, Calvinism, if you will, right? So this is all happening. And so I'm watching believers on the left, guys that I respect and love, man, they're really just angry. They're offended, man. They're hurt. They're angry. And so I think God exposed that because God cares about his people. He exposed that BLM and anti-racism and all that was the wrong allegiance. God exposed that by showing that Black Lives Matter was a fraud. And then you had like not necessarily everything they stood for, but a lot of what they stood for. It was like, nah, we can't. He had to expose that. And then you had, these white fragility and all this anti-racist movement and then all this stuff was becoming like the gospel to people on the left, racial reconciliation. While I think there's gospel included in that, it just became the only thing that matters. And if you don't, then we can't fellowship with you. And it just destroyed the church. And there were people on the left that got so offended because people on the right just didn't agree, didn't see it or whatever. And so they were overcome by evil and were repaying evil for evil. And I watched good friendships that still, at least as far as I know, that haven't been mended. Just hurt. I even lost some friends. And I'm going to be honest with you. Like on this, when I'm talking to y'all, I'm pretty straightforward and this and that. But I'm from the hood. I'm black. Like I'm unapologetically black. I could talk in black slang from DC right now. Y'all would be like, whoa, Pastor Kerr. I'm not even talking about cussing. I could just switch up dialects and be a whole totally different thing. So like I move in these circles. To me, in terms of how black people classify being black, I used to be like, man, I'm blacker than you. What you getting offended at me for because I don't agree with that narrative? I'm blacker than you. I've actually had police slam me on the car or slam me down on the ground and pat my pockets, and I'm terrified that they might plant something in the car. I've had that happen to me. A lot of these people hadn't even had that happen to them, and they telling me that I'm not black because I don't agree with everything they say. It was just crazy. It was crazy. People were overcome by evil and repaying evil for evil. And the evil that they were overcome by specifically was bitterness. A lot of Christians on the left just got bitter at Christians on the right. Got bitter. And so then it became, man, if you voted for Donald Trump and you were a white Christian, you only did it because you support white supremacy and because of white privilege. We totally just threw out the window that people, when politics to people is very personal. I know people that are card-carrying Republicans, card-carrying Democrats. I don't care if Pusty McMichaels is on the ticket. That's who they voting for. It's not about, a lot of people didn't support Trump, but he was on the ticket, right? They had to make these qualifications. Never Trumper, but I'm voting for him because the alternative is I got to vote for Joe Biden or I got to vote for Obama, whatever it was. So I can't vote for him. Why? Because I'm a card carrying, my values are intrinsically connected to my politics. And that got lost. It was like, it was all about race. If you vote for him, you support white supremacy. And if you vote for him, then you are a social justice warrior. You're woke. And this is in the church, fam. This is among God's people. Just watching it just destroy relationships. Watching dudes just, people were overcome by bitterness. And the Lord exposed that by exposing the left. Exposing it. That's the main reason why why Kamala Harris lost, because the Lord didn't want her to win. The Lord specifically is exposing things. Now I told you this isn't going where you think it's going to go, because now I need to explain this. The Lord is not done exposing. And you have to understand something about the Bible. 1 Peter 4, let me tell you 2 verses real quick to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. Galatians 6:7 is clear. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. For whatever one sows, that he will also reap. I am a firm believer. You could disagree with me, and that's fine. This is the I disagree with you decade. The one thing you cannot disagree on, though, here's one thing you cannot disagree. That you need to go pick up this album. This episode is brought to you by the assassination by JFK. Go pick this up, streaming everywhere, but don't just stream it. Go to Bandcamp in the description. Click on the link and buy this bad boy. Support your boy. This album will help you process. It'll help you think about something different than all the crazy drama that we're dealing with right now. The assassination by JFK is everywhere. I worked hard on this project for y'all and for myself. I like to make the music, but I rap. So go pick that up. All right, having said that, back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps for the souls. I am a firm believer that a lot of what's happening now is not new. It's just we're reaping what we've sown. You know, the one thing about Christianity in America that I find fascinating, that's not biblical, is that Christianity in America tends to think that if something happened a long time ago, it doesn't matter. Like it does, like it's almost like God forgot about it. And that's just not really true. Think about this, on the day of judgment, right? When the books are open at Revelation 20:11 through 15, everything that God talks about with people will have been done sometimes thousands of years ago. Like God is not forgetting none of that. And I think within the church we think like, hey, it's a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, and so it's not that big of a deal. We think that happened a long time ago. Slavery happened a long time ago. Jim Crow, systemic racism ended in the 60s with the civil rights legislation. Okay, but you think there's no consequences for that, right? There's no consequence. There's no consequences on how people feel, on the psyche of people. So do you honestly think that, you passed the Federal Housing Act? Did that mean everyone was just treating black people fairly from that point on? Whatever. No, of course not. You think, now people in the neighborhoods just trust the police officers who it doesn't happen like that. There are consequences that last longer than the actions themselves. And American Christianity seems to act like that the gospel just erases all of that. The gospel doesn't. No, the gospel doesn't. The gospel gives you hope in the midst of it. Jesus said, look, the scriptures say, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It doesn't say I don't walk through the valley of the shadow of death no more. It just says you're with me, right? There are lingering effects when you hurt people. Think about this. Let's take it out of the realm of racism stuff, because people think, that's woke. I don't want to hear. I'm tired of hearing about race. Okay, just think about your own life. You get in a conflict with your spouse and you say some harsh words. You ain't gonna just be like, hey, babe, tomorrow, ready to have sex like it's nothing. No, you hurt that woman. You hurt that man. They need to heal before they feel comfortable doing that. You know, you hurt that child. That child is afraid of you now. They don't feel comfortable talking to you. You got siblings that haven't talked to each other in decades because of you said some hurtful things. Like there are lingering consequences even when you're sorry. And the American church acts like that was a long time ago, and because some black people were willing to come to white churches for the sake of the gospel, that everything was good. And it was like, nah, there's still some pain here. We just set it aside for the sake of the gospel. But if it's coming up in the culture, you can't have us. White people wanted black people to come to their churches, but they didn't want black people to come with their issues. And you can't have that. You cannot marry someone. You cannot be united with someone and be united only with the idea of them. You got all of it comes together. And so I think what we're experiencing now as a country is we're reaping what we've sown. I think all these things that America has never atoned for. You passed a couple laws and think that changes all the scars and the hurt and the memories. And it just doesn't happen. And we act like, well, that's the past. Why we stuck in the past? Well, why do we celebrate Independence Day then? That was the past too. Why do we celebrate Columbus Day? That was the past too, right? You selectively pick what past you want to celebrate when it highlights something good you did, but you want to act like that was a long time ago when it's something bad you did, and it doesn't work that way. Not with humanity, and it definitely doesn't work with God. We're reaping what we sown. But here's the other verse, 1 Peter 4:17 through 18. It says, For it is time for judgment to begin at where? The Democrats? The Republicans? No, the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And then listen to this verse 18. And if the righteous is scarcely saved, what will become of the ungodly and sinner? Scarcely saved. By the hair of our chinny chin chin. And you got all these Christians with their chests out, talking with this confidence about who God is and what God's going to do. And they don't even think for a moment that they're scarcely saved. That if you get in, you just might get in barely. This is what's happening. The Lord is not done exposing. He's exposed the left. And the Christians on the left have now had to regroup and really, and I think see some of it. I've known some of them who've seen that error. They've seen some of it. But he's not done exposing. So why did Kamala Harris lose? Because the Lord wanted Donald Trump to win. But I don't think he wants Donald Trump to win because Donald Trump is the Lord's champion. He wants him to get in and fix all this stuff. And no, I don't think so. And this might lose me some more subscribers. And I'm good with that if that happens. This is what I think is going to happen in these next 4 years. Again, I'm not a prophet, so take this with a grain of salt unless you have high blood pressure. And despite what you think, I'm big, but I don't have high blood pressure. I just went not too long ago. My joint was like 120 over something. They were like, oh my gosh. I was like, yeah. I think the Lord is going to expose the believers on the right for their allegiance to Trump, and they were overcome by evil as well from the left. Where the left was overcome by bitterness, I think believers on the right have been overcome by vengeance. By vengeance. By vengeance. It wasn't just about policies. It was deeper than that. I was around a lot of conservatives. My circles for years had a lot to do with white conservative Christians. And they felt free to talk in front of me because they knew I was balanced. If they said something that was true that I agree with about the black community, I agree with it. I'm from the community. But they knew I would also say something about the white community that they had to accept. I heard a lot of them. And there was a lot of vengeance, a lot of anger, a lot of hurt. A lot of hurt being called white privilege, being called white supremacists, saying that you only supported Trump because of that. It was a lot of hurt. And so all of a sudden now, the conservative Christians, many of them white, they started losing the values that they had, the character that they think they have the moral high ground because they don't agree with abortion, the LGBTQ and all these different things. And they didn't realize that they were transforming into the Pharisee instead of the tax collector who went home justified. They became the Pharisee. And we're calling out because I'm glad I don't do this. How dare you vote for this? I don't agree with that. I'm not woke. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't agree with that. And they become all of a sudden the party that disagrees with the left, and they would take, and then it became about vengeance. And they loved when Trump would say fake news and all these things and make fun of other people because they imitated that their very leader. They went from, man, this is God's judgment that he's president, to how could you be a Christian if you don't vote for him? And I think God is going to expose. He's going to expose believers on the right. I think it's their turn. He exposed the left, and he's always going to continue to do it. But I think God's going to expose the believers on the right who, despite everything, just think that they're so deceived in thinking that politics and Trump and all this is what God wants. Look at this photo right here. This is Vanity Fair magazine. I think this is today's issue. Look at this. Vanity Fair magazine. 34 felony counts. 1 conviction. 2 cases pending. 2 impeachments. 6 bankruptcies. 4 more years, right? The 47th American president. The 47th American president. 34 felony counts. 1 conviction. You know when you bring that up to conservatives, you know what they say? That was a sham trial. But they didn't say nothing when black people said that about how they were treated by the law. They didn't say that at all. Ben Shapiro and them on down. They used Candace Owens as their dog. They'd be like, look at the black community. They commit the most murder. They do all these different things. They never said nothing about. They never apologized when she was wrong. None of it. None of it. They cared about felonies when it was on the left or when somebody black or when somebody black said they were falsely accused. They cared about felonies. But then when Trump gets it, it was a sham trial. Well, if they believe that that's true, then they should get rid of all the questions about have you had a felony or been convicted of a felony on job applications. They should do no background checks anymore, because if a convicted felon can be the president of the United States, then a convicted felon from the street should be able to get a job at the post office. If they really believe that, then they need to prove it. But they're not going to do that because it's selective. It's selective. Because they're the Pharisee. I'm glad I'm not like that. I wouldn't vote that way. You can't be a Christian and vote that way. I wouldn't do that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that. And they think God is so proud of them, so pleased with them. Oh, look at he destroyed the left. And so it's like, yep, that's been decimated. But now he's coming for the right. I believe so. Because God cannot be mocked. You cannot have allegiance to somebody with a moral character like that and hide behind policies, and then you imitate that character. Let me tell you something. I sat there like a tennis match watching this, and it was just unlove versus unlove, and just how deep can we go? It was love is patient. It was impatience versus love is kind. It was unkind. Love is not. It is not rude. It was rude versus rude. It does not keep a record of wrong. It was everything. It does not insist on its own way. It was all of it. I just watched it, and sometimes I participated in it. I got caught up in the Lord. I just had to realize, hold up, Lord. No, wait a minute. No, I got to stay balanced. And people thought I meant stay balanced politically, and they got offended at me. I said, no, I need to stay balanced biblically, because I got to love my enemies. I can't allow my emotions to be drawn to this side or that side, because I got to I got to honor the Lord. I got to do that. And I got kids who are mixed. They're Latino and black. I got to help them honor the Lord no matter whether they experience racism or not. And so I just pulled back. I started not talking to people like I used to and just pulled back. Started just doing me. Did my own podcast, did my own thing, and started talking about my own issues and pointing out both sides like I do now. It was just sin is sin is sin, sin. And I think the right has mocked God by thinking that God does not care or has forgotten about all the lovelessness, the vengeance that has come from them because they disagree with abortion. They don't like LGBT. They agree that a man is what God intended. They agree that marriage is this. And somehow God is like, bravo, bravo. They forget that God says, if a man says he loves God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For you cannot love God whom you have seen if you do not love your brother whom you cannot love God whom you have not seen if you do not love your brother whom you have seen. They forget that it says do good to everyone, especially those in the household of faith. It's vengeance. And then you bring it up to them and they come up with all the excuses why. I said this to my church from time to time. I would rather you be offended at something I said than God be offended at something you did. And I think I've watched this play out. And so I'm not saying I'm innocent. I've sinned in these ways, and I've repented. I've asked the Lord for forgiveness, and I kept it moving. I've kept it moving. But I'm still going to stay the same. So like I said, okay, lose a couple more subscribers. Cool. But I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to speak truth. And then truth will make friends, and truth will end relationships. Not that these are real friendships anyway. There's only a couple people here that I really, really bang with because they consistently have been around and they hear me and see me, know what I'm talking about. But apart from that, this is what it is. But the reality is this: I think the Lord let Trump win, not because, Trump's his guy and Trump's gonna do all these things. I think Trump is gonna fail miserably. Not like he may pass him, but I think he's gonna anger a lot. I think the Lord's gonna let Trump pee right on evangelical churches. I think he's gonna do it because there's too much allegiance for him. You would never show the kind of grace that you do a guy who's a felon. I mean, think about this. We're going to have a convicted felon as a president. On one level, I kind of think that's crazy in a funny way. Now, by the grace of God, I didn't have felonies, but I got some convictions. I got some misdemeanors, some shootouts and some stuff like that I've been in. This was what it was. And I'm so glad that life is separated from me. But it's just crazy to me that when it's, and this is the problem that I have with conservatives. They're just the Pharisee. They're Luke 18. It's the Pharisee and the tax collector. I am trying my best to be the tax collector because Jesus said he went home justified. And these folks are so blind. They think it's about policies and about these things. And God, man, listen. God says, look, I look at the heart. It says, worship the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So many of these believers, man, on the right, man, they don't love the Lord, fam. They love policy. They love the power that comes with exposing the other side. And it's just like, I think the Lord is going to use Trump. He's going to do some stuff that you like at first. First, it's going to be a fun ride. Yeah, look at them. I know the lefties. Look at the lefties just crying and all that. You got Christian content creators going to be making their YouTube videos, not even thinking that they might be unloving. I just don't, man, do people read the Bible? We are known by our love, fam. We are known by our love. It's fascinating to me. So I just think the left was overcome by bitterness because they felt like all the hurt and the stuff they're going into the rate and what they call white privilege and race. But the Christians on the right are overcome by vengeance, man. You stop listening to your brothers because you just got offended. And then it became about vengeance. You didn't care about what they all. So that's why I think Kamala Harris lost. I don't think it was just, because of her views, her political views. I think the Lord is doing something deeper. The Lord ain't playing, man. Listen, remember this verse. For it is time for judgment to begin. Peter wrote this a couple thousand years ago, right? Just under 2,000 years ago, Peter wrote this. And it is time for judgment to begin at the household of God. And if it begins with us, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel? Listen to what he's saying. If it begins with us, what's going to be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel? Now, most modern day Christians think that means people who've made a profession of faith versus people who do not. No. He said, do not obey the gospel of God, not made a profession of faith. You can make a profession of faith and not obey the gospel of God. Jesus said, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. He said, woe to you, Pharisees. You clean the outside, but the inside has bones and skulls. And he said, clean the inside and the outside will be clean. Modern American evangelicals, especially those on the right, they act like obey the gospel of God means make a profession of faith. He says the righteous are scarcely saved. Do you know how much transforming that is to realize, whoa, I am scarcely saved. Let me work out my salvation with fear and trembling, which means let me work hard to take seriously the commands that God gives so that I'm not in error more as just frivolously. I just think people think grace lowers the standard of holiness. It just forgives us for not keeping it. The standard that God said 2,000 years ago is what we're going to be judged by 2,000 years from now. And all these Christians, I just see them just put their chests out, gloating, just vengeance, just laughing at people who are disappointed as if like God is doing the same. Man, oh man. But what do I know? I'm going to stop these political videos soon because I'm just doing them because this is the topic that everybody's talking about right now. But I'm going to be moving away from these soon because I just think I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm going to watch and see what happens and see what the Lord does. I think Christians on the right who think they've won the battle are getting ready to be in a war, a holy war. And I think God is going to purify his people. And he's going to use the people that you idolize. He's going to do it. People idolize Trump. That man is a convicted. All these things you would not give the grace to the same people. It's to anyone else who was a convicted felon. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris was a convicted felon or Obama? You think that they would be like, hey, it was probably a sham trial? No. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end, because this is a whole video in itself. Let me tell you why I think the Lord's going to expose the right. Because this is what I think. I think Trump, I think Trump, because people like, I'm talking about conservatives who are like supposed to be the moral people, dismiss all of the stuff I just showed you from Vanity Fair. They dismiss all of this like it's nothing. It was just the left. None of this is true. Even though Trump has people that went to prison that were his people. They're in prison now. It was true. It wasn't true for him. It was just the left trying to target him. You know what Trump has done? And I don't know if he meant to, but you know what he's done? He's made Christians call evil good and good evil. They think because I think, don't get me wrong, I think conservatives are 100% right on abortion. I think they're right on marriage. I think they're right on those things. I'm with them. I've been a conservative my whole life, most of my life. I never voted Democrat, but I don't vote now because I just can't. I can't support anybody. I just pray to the Lord. I'm following 1 Timothy 2:1-5. That we pray for the kings in high places and we make supplication and prayers for all the saints. That's how I'm trying to honor the Lord. I think conservatives are spot on. Conservatives, I think it's biblical to not, but I don't think conservatives are spot on in terms of the level to which they raise it and the sins against others. Listen, if we are allowed to sin because we disagree with people or people disagree with our positions, then we are not like Jesus. 1 Peter 2 says, when reviled, he did not revile in return. Oh my gosh. You can just go on your Facebook feed and watch Christians just revile other people because of who they voted for. I think a lot of believers are going to hear, depart from me, I never knew you. Not because they didn't understand the doctrines of grace, but because they didn't demonstrate the character of grace. The kingdom of heaven is a kingdom of character, fam. Don't get it twisted. It's not a kingdom of circumstances and causes. It's a kingdom of character. And my videos won't be as popular as others, and that's fine. But as scripture says, let those who have ears to hear, let them hear. And with that being said, don't forget to go get to The Assassination, streaming everywhere, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, all of it. Go get this album. It's a tough joint, and then tell me what you think about it. With that being said, let's go to the tape. There's a lot of comments here, fam. A lot of comments. Seen that good? What's up with you, Brandon? Yep, saw that. Let's go here for the latest streams. Yep, appreciate you, Logan. Appreciate you, Logan, man. You be tagging me on Facebook with your stuff. Keep it up, bro. Your last stream was one of my favorites. Thank you, famo. Appreciate you. Blessings, everyone. Always appreciate you. Yeah, people assume I should be crying and upset that Kamala lost because I'm black, and I should be ashamed if I'm not reacting that way, which I think is wild. 100%. People just act like if you're black, like they just be. I was in a barbershop and dude was like, man, you upset? I was like, nah, I'm not upset. It's just funny to me. I think that is wild. The irony is 80% of blacks voted for Kamala, 100%. So many nasty things were said about her by pastors, like calling her Jezebel, 100%. You know what's funny, Shawana? You know what's funny about that? Ashana? I don't know if it's Shawana or Shana because of the spelling, but Shawana, I'm just going to pronounce it the way it looks. You know what's interesting? I remember watching like Megyn Kelly and all these people. There was a period like she slept her way to the top. They were saying, and I was like, and this is what I mean. This is what I mean about calling evil good and good evil. It's selective, right? It doesn't mean you think, oh, what Trump did is good. It's just that you don't have the same disdain towards his sin as you do others. I was like, Kamala slept her way to the top? This dude almost lost the first autonomy against Hillary Clinton because he was on videotape with Billy Bush saying that he grabs women in their private parts against their will, and he was okay with it. And then had the audacity to call a locker room talk. This dude has been married a few times and has been known to commit adultery, but she slept her way to the top. That's the stuff I'm talking about. It's that type of stuff. They're calling her Jezebel. What is Trump then? Jezebel? If she's Jezebel, Trump is Jezebel. Like, what are we? This is what I'm saying. Unbalanced scales. Unbalanced. I think the Lord's going to humble the Republicans. I do. It was planned for her to lose. Probably so. Maybe. I don't know what you mean by that, but God allowed their plan. Maybe. The object failure of the permissive left was designed and planned. The contrast made as great as possible. This was done to have as much momentum as possible to swing our country hard right. And I'm not sure where you're coming from, Dennis. I'm not sure if I understand it. Christian nationalism, oxymoron, is truly Christian. It will be a step towards global. Okay, I see what you're saying. Global ecumenicalism, one world religion, one world government. How far? Okay, that's your perspective. Okay, I feel that. I see that. I see what you're saying. I see that. Trump's rise in politics is a byproduct of Obama's liberal policies. 100%. 100%. And that's why black people got offended, because they took nominating Trump as a smite against Obama because he was black. They weren't thinking of liberal policy. That's what I'm saying. Like, what are you talking about, fam? Like, why would you think that, like, being black to people meant more than, like, this Bama has policies that are crazy. Crazy stuff. I mean, you're trying to tell school systems. Listen, part of the reason why the T of LGBT got be capitalized and it got bigger than everyone else, because Obama, in the last year and a half after Olga befell, gay marriage passed in 2015. Obama's last year, man, he was telling schools if they don't, that was about gay marriage. If they don't start letting people use the bathroom of their choice, that they were going to hold back federal funding from school. School systems were countersuing the federal government because of it. And then you're shocked that Trump gets to be president after that? Man, people are just wild. It's just interesting to watch all this play out. I went to the Beatty Church in Southeast DC. Yeah, the Beatty was my man. That was my dude. The Beatty was my man. He's my dude. We don't talk anymore, partly because of what stuff I said. He was my man. That was my dude. Tony Carter from East Point Church. Yep, Tony. It's my man, Tony. Anthony Carter. Yep. The Beatty was popping in 2015. He disappeared in 2016. No, he didn't disappear. No, he stayed around. He was around until probably, I think the Beatty started to pull back around 2019, 2020, before COVID. He started getting, I think he was just like, I'm done with this, man. I'm just done with it. And so, I'm saying that because we went to have, we had a conversation, but I'm not going to divulge what that conversation was. But it was around that time he started to pull back. And then Eric Mason did as well. He started focusing on writing and stuff like that. But because they were just getting attacked. And some of the things they were saying they shouldn't have said them like that. But some things they were misunderstood because there was it was like almost like, hey, we're about the gospel. We shouldn't be brought. And it's like, what? Remember in 2 Kings 19 when Josiah, remember what happened with Josiah? Josiah inherited the throne. And then they found Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, and they read it before Josiah. And he tore his clothes, told them to go inquire of the Lord. And the Lord confirmed that because your ancestors didn't obey me, I'm going to punish you all currently. And then he did a lot of reforms and swayed some of God's wrath until later. But it was interesting that people couldn't see that what Eric Mason and them were talking about at times. They were sometimes hurt. They didn't always articulate it well. But what they were talking about was the lingering consequences, the effects of, or in many ways, the shock of, hey, we went to white seminaries. We left the cultural comforts for the gospel. And now you're acting like that didn't mean anything because now you're calling me these names and we've served together. It was just a crazy time. It was a crazy time. Theology Mom's channel perfectly encapsulates what you were saying with the black and white Christian debate. Okay, I'm not sure about that. I never heard of it, but she was talking about CRT in 2019 while she had a black Christian woman living in her house. Okay, yeah. Yeah, CRT was wild. That joint was wild. But you know what? You know how I saw CRT? I saw CRT as a desperate ploy to try to get some white evangelicals to see that, like, you cannot always be right about race, man. There's ways that you're thinking. So they tried to bring CRT in as a way to show these people, fam, you wrong too, though. It can't always be us. It can't always be. And I was right there. I'm telling you, if I named to you some of the people that I was around, the people I knew, I was sitting with some of the movers and shakers. I knew I was having conversations with them being like, wow. I was doing my thing through music. So I dropped in 2017, I dropped an album called C4. And then in 2018, I dropped The Appendix. If you want, go find them on any streaming platform, on the Kirk Kennedy. I was like, all right, y'all do y'all thing and arguing in the spirit. I'm going to try to make my case through the music and try to hopefully get people. I did this thing called album mentories, with album documentary. But it was tough. It was tough back then. It was tough. The woke black preachers was doing a lot of scripture twisting. Hey, 100%, fam. No. Don't get it twisted. That's not what I'm not saying that 100%. There was stuff that was dead straight. Eminem and Biggie, you're dead wrong. They was dead wrong. But there were some points they made that were decent. Pastor Eric Mason did a sermon on reparations and was scriptures out of context. Yeah, that, I haven't heard it. That might be true. But you know why? You know why reparations became a big deal? You know why? Because Jews got paid billions of dollars in reparations from the Holocaust. There was a war tribunal, right? There was a war tribunal where you had 6 judges from different countries. America was one of them. That in the 1940s, they had a war tribunal that declared 21 of Hitler's top 23 lieutenants declared guilty of war crimes against the Jews. The Jews were rescued out of Auschwitz. They were given money. To this day, now I have an article dated 2017 that said up until then, at least, that the U.S. was the brokerage firm that was giving billions of dollars to people from Poland, France, and Belgium. There were reparations pretty much for the Jews in the Holocaust. Members of the family, all of that stuff, right? Black people didn't get rescued from that Auschwitz, man. They set up schools and churches in their Auschwitz. The government let the South name schools in black communities after Robert E. Lee, one of the main generals that wanted to keep slavery alive. There was so I think a lot of it was like, man, you did that for them. There was nothing for us. There was a couple of legislation things. It was like, okay, fine, get over it. You can't give somebody, have a 50-mile advantage on somebody and then say, all right, from now on, we're going to give you right shoes. All right, now you got to catch up and you 50 miles ahead. So I understood why some of their reparations conversations were off kilter, because they were trying to make a point that the Bible didn't make, because they were trying to get people who said they believed the Bible to have a compassion they refused to have. It wasn't just one side. It goes both ways. Just got here. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I know they will be deep and fast. Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate you. DC in the chat, you know what I'm saying, 100. These youngers out here, these bandits out here, they don't know what's going on. DC cats refer to dudes as Mo and Young. Mo is a new thing. Young is old school. I'm old school. Mo is the new youngins. We'd be like, man, these bandits out here, young. These bandits out here lunching, young. We off that. Don't forget how we also got here from C2, 100% T-Dog. C2, I explained how we got here. Explain all of it. Man, it's a lot going on. Marilda Kurt, I believe the Lord is working on humility with Trump, and that is why he did not win before, and Trump seems to show a different attitude now. Time will tell, and God's purpose is like, hey, I hope you're right. I would love to see that happen. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. But I'll believe it when I see it. Like I don't, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, Marilda. I just don't know. Like I said before, I could be totally wrong in what I think, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think when Trump gets that power back, you know, and the Republicans got the House, and I think now the Senate, they might get that. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. So if you're right, that would be fantastic. I would love to see that. Praying for Trump. I would love to see that, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Time to prosper. Excellent. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Brandon, this is sobering. Listen, I've been through it. I've been there. I saw it. I've been through it. Great observations in a biblical way. White, black, brown, red, and yellow. If you are in Jesus Christ, we are one body of Christ. Yes, 100% believe in hope. That's really what it is. That's really the real issue. We are that way. Amen. Believe in hope. Amen. All I can say is get your house in order. Amen, brother. I mean, 100%. 100%. Like the Lord is not playing. He's not playing. And I think a lot of people forget that. What's good? What's good, JV? JV Truth was good. So I've never seen that type of allegiance. One lady said if he didn't win, she wanted to die because she couldn't bear. I can't believe that. Shawana, that's what I mean. Is that type of thing? I've heard believers say stuff like that. That's what I mean. Like, really? Like, let's just be honest, right? These last 4 years have not been great. Inflation has been up. Grocery bills been high. Gas has been high. But guess what? My kids never missed a meal. Never missed a meal. The Lord provided through all that. My kids never missed a meal. I ain't missed no meals. I probably need to skip a few. My house, I'm still in my home. Still got a nice house. My cat don't know nothing but food and snacks. Like, it's like with all of the drama that we went through, We were able to get through it. It wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. The problem is we think America is supposed to be sort of a euphoria, and it's not. Belinda Carlisle sung Heaven on Earth. That's a prophetic song, but not for this time. And I think a lot of believers think like, hey, I want to have these things right now, so I don't have to struggle without having. It's like, fam, we're going to struggle. And I think that's a lot of the problem. Yeah, false balances and ambition. I believe 2020 was God's judgment to the right. I don't think it was God's judgment to the right. I think he hit all of us. 2020 was wild. But if you're talking about the election, yeah, I don't think it was God's judgment to the. I mean, I see why you would say that. If you're talking about the election, what I think happened was God. That was the beginning of the exposure because you had January 6th. Those weren't left. Those weren't Democrat. Those weren't Black Lives Matter doing that. For all the destruction that people who marched in Black Lives Matter did, hitting like retail stores and stuff like that, deplorable. But man, the Capitol though, fam, Bama's ran up in the Capitol. That was crazy, and conservatives will downplay that. They'll downplay that. So it's like, okay, you call evil good and good evil because you think, and I just think the Lord's going to say something. He's going to say it. No one's talking about how Trump's wife looks at him. It's obvious she does not want to be with him. I mean, I obviously don't know her heart, right? But I see the same glare as you see. I bet you they're not even probably together in an intimate way. Probably haven't been for a long time. I think it's just for her. It's a come up. Where else is she going to go? So I don't know her heart. Maybe she loves him dearly. But I see why you say that, though. Evangelicals paint her as the most classy first lady, and she doesn't want this. Yeah, they paint her as the most classy first lady, right? Evangelicals, keep in mind, right? So they paint her as the most classy. So in April in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, and then on May 7th in New York City, Kamala Harris did a fundraiser for log cabin Republicans, okay? Log cabin Republicans are essentially LGBT Republicans. She raised $1 million in New York City for log cabin Republicans. Right? She's supposed to be the class, but they don't say nothing about that, right? And then she has a memoir that either just dropped or is about to drop, where she basically says the government should not interfere with a woman and what she does with her body. It was a big story like 3 weeks ago, and then it got quiet real quick. She doesn't even agree. So that's the kind of stuff that I feel like, all right, I think the Lord sees that. You do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. You call good evil and evil good. Okay, I think God is going to show up. I think he's going to show up. That's what I think. Tito Mario walking on the floor. Yep. Says, I'll say to all people that are gloating, that's ungodly. And to all people that are crying and sad, that's not in faith. Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with that, bro. Plus all the sexual assault allegations that he has against him. No, that's just the left. That's just fake. That's calling evil good and good evil. Listen, here's the thing. To all my conservative brothers, there's no sin in voting conservative. That's fine. But don't pretend like Trump is something that he's not, though. Just be honest about it, right? Listen, we got two choices, steak or chicken. You voted for steak. Cool. We get that. You might be mad at people that vote chicken, that's fine, but you got two options for real. In terms of who could win, at least. That's one thing to say, I'm a card-carrying Republican, those are my values, I vote Republican. I get it. Politics is deeply personal for people. I think it's deplorable, a lot of politics on the left. I think there's some deplorable politics on the right. But I think the left is more evil, if I'm being honest, from a political perspective. From a humanity perspective, I mean. I think they are more evil. So I can see why people say, no, I can't do that, right? But don't pretend like Donald Trump is like a saint, like in that everything against him. This dude has been a pathological liar for a long time. And I'm just looking at that, you judge a tree by the fruit of the bears. That's the problem I have. It's like, okay, you're a card-carrying Republican, vote Republican. I get it, do it. But expose the deeds of darkness. The problem I saw was I never heard, until Candace Owens got into that beef with Ben Shapiro about Israel, I never heard her say anything negative about the right. It was only the left, and vice versa. They only do that. Never. And this is the problem. If you're a believer, you're supposed to have just scales, balanced scales. That means I can talk about the black community when it's true, and I can talk about the white community, whatever community when it's true. We trying to be faithful here. That's just not what happens. That's just not what happens. So one cannot expect Trump to act like a Christian when he is not. He needs the Holy Spirit. But the problem, Marilda, is many conservatives are saying he is a Christian. They're saying he is a Christian. Some of them say, oh, after he got shot, he got saved. I don't see any fruit of that. I don't see any fruit of that. Absolutely unbalanced scales, 100%. Unbalanced scales. I've been saying this for years, but I'm with you on how you can't vote currently. 100% DJ one way. Can't do it. Can't do it. The Reformed Church used to be so strong. Crazy times. It did, bro. It did. Doug Logan. Yeah, Doug Logan's a good friend of mine, man. I know Doug. Doug calls himself Diddy. He called himself. I never called him Diddy because that was his name for himself. Other people call him that. But I should text Doug and be like, hey, bro, you still calling yourself Diddy? You might want to stop doing that these days. But nah, Doug Logan's a good dude, man. Solid brother, man. I love Doug, man. Good peoples, man. Me and Doug. Nah, I probably shouldn't tell that story. Never mind. Doug is good people, though. Your points on what happened within the church during Mike Brown and after, I saw it as well and tried many times explaining this, but was mentally, it was, bro. DJ one way. It was, but I felt obligated because I had the relationships and I was in there. So he said I started to back off these talks. Yeah, a lot of people did. I remember a lot of these guys were like, man, I'm just done. I'm just don't have relationships. It was just done, man. Guys were just done. And I was like, wow. That was a crazy thing to just see guys. I'm just done. They concede. And this is what happens, man. They concede hope. Concede hope. That's what happens. Appendix is a banger. My dude, thank you, Logan. I appreciate that. Appendix was a tough album. That joint took so much work because I was, the first 6 songs I'm just rapping. But then once you get to Crawling on the album, that's when the album mentally starts. And I'm trying to help people see how we got to this, why racism is still a problem. Why are we even having this conversation in 2017 if systemic racism is all but done, right? I try to use Appendix to help people see that. Grew up in Appalachia and never thought of similarities between rednecks and black communities till listening to the Appendix. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You heard that? Rednecks and nigga. That was right. That was it. That was a song. That was a joint. You know what's funny? You know what's interesting? How far J.D. Vance has come. I read his book, right? I read his book in 2016. Oh my gosh, how am I blanking on the book? That book inspired Rednecks and Niggas that I wrote. It inspired that. It inspired that song because I read his book about growing up in Appalachia. Oh my gosh, how am I forgetting the name of this book? I'm getting old, fam. What's the name of his book? Someone put it in the chat. What's the name of J.D. Vance's book that was basically talking about Appalachia? He grew up in Appalachia, poor white people, and he described all this stuff and all of it. Yes, thank you, Logan. Hillbilly Elegy. Man, that book changed the way I saw a lot of things because it was the first time you heard poor white people who would say white privilege, where? Where is white privilege at? They was like, we ain't got no white privilege. They were poor than some black. I know a lot of people in the hood got Jordans on, fresh jeans, True Religion jeans. These people is dirty. But I'll never forget in J.D. Vance's the introduction of Hillbilly Elegy, he made a statement. I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like this: I've heard about many welfare queens, and he named a couple of the names in my day, and I've seen them too, but none of them were black. They were all white. That's how he ended, I think, his introduction. And it was just like, wow. And he takes you on this journey and you realize, wow, these white people are going through some of the same statistical errors, things that black people were doing. Abortion, pregnancy rate was high. High school literacy rate, dropout rate was high. Crime rate was up. Domestic violence was up. Drug use was up. Oh, all the stuff that distributed to the black community, these same people were experiencing that too. Now, maybe there might be a little bit more violence within the black community, but you have hundreds of years of an oppression that plays somewhat of a psychological advantage on you. And so Hillbilly Elegy was a fantastic book. So I applaud you. Curry, you was a part of Act 29. I was, man. I was a part of Act 29 for a couple years. I was. I liked what they did. I knew Matt Chandler. I liked him. He was a good dude. I liked him. Thought he was genuine. But I think whenever you're a part of an organization, you're not in control of what that organization does when they start changing their perspective. And you have to, and I just felt like I can't ride with them. anymore. I can't ride with organizations that just almost carry it like because you're blessed to be a part of them. And it's just like, no, I'm blessed to be a part of the kingdom. I don't need your organization to be a functioning church. But that's something different. I got the new one on Bandcamp. Boy, let me tell you something, Brandon. Let me tell you what you're talking about. When you say I got the new one on Bandcamp, Brandon, you talking about this right here. Go pick this up, The Assassination, JFK. You got to find it there. Telling you, this is a different album. It's a different album. If you're a Kirk Kennedy fan, that is a different album. I did some different things and I appreciate it. Although I can't sing along that song. You can't sing Rednecks and Niggas. I can sing it because I said it. And I'm allowed to say it because I'm black. All right, man, I'm out of here. This was a long stream, hour and 25 minutes. But I appreciate y'all, man. Like and subscribe to the channel. I had some people get offended and leave. Go ahead, build me back up. You know what I'm saying? Wipe me down. Wipe me down. Wipe me up. Build me back up. But I'm always speak truth. And I understand that people, we live in a society of lies. And people they're going to think the truth is a lie because it offends them. It's like, okay, cool. I get it. So I'm going to keep doing it. But I appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe. Go back and check the video. Leave comments on the actual video so the algorithm is like, whoa, people are talking about this joint even though it's an hour and a half long. And it's long because I love y'all. I can make this video 40 minutes and be done, but I add another 40 minutes because I'm messing with y'all, but I bang with y'all tough. Appreciate you. We'll see you on the next video. I'm doing a retreat this weekend, so I might not be posting this weekend because it might be spotty. I might try to get a video in, but if I'm not, no worries. See y'all when I see y'all. Peace.